So today we're going to be covering distribution. So distribution pretty much is just multiplying. All right, let me enlarge this. Okay, so we're going to kind of combine this distribution, which is new, with what we did yesterday. So whenever you see a set of parentheses that has a number out front, like here, we're going to do the multiplying first. So I have a -3 out front of the parentheses, which means I'm going to have to multiply it by everything on the inside of the parentheses. So this x and also this 4. All right, so let's break it down. First, I'm going to take this -3 and I'm going to multiply it by this x. -3 times x. When you multiply a number in a variable, all you do is stick it together. So -3 times x is just -3x. Okay, next I'm going to take that -3 and multiply it by the next thing in the parentheses, which is this 4. So I have a -3 times a +4. -3 times 4 is a -12. Okay, one mistake that some students try to make is they want to take this -3 and multiply it by this 5 over here, but notice this +5 is on the outside of the parentheses. So this -3 is only being multiplied by the guys inside. It stops here. Okay, so this +5 is just going to drop down. Okay, so we have finished the distribution part, so now all we have to do is take our like terms and combine them. So remember, that's what we did yesterday. We're going to take the stuff that looks alike and add them up. So remember, we look at our variables first, so I'm going to look for my x's, and I see -3x's right here. So I'm going to make that a little bigger. And there are no other x's, so remember, when that happens, it's easy peasy, we just drop it down. Okay, next we're going to do numbers that are all alone, the constants. So I see a -12 and I see a +5. So those are two numbers I need to combine, add up. So -12 plus 5 is a -7. So I'm going to write that as -7. And we're done. All right, so let's try number 2. Okay, so notice I have my parentheses with this -8 out front, so I need to multiply that -8 by everything on the inside of parentheses. So it's going to be by this guy and this guy. All right, so -8 times 2y. So let's focus on that -8 times 2. Well, I know -8 times 2 is -16, but I can't forget about that y. So -8 times 2y is -16y. So that y is just going to stick onto them. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm going to take this -8 and I'm going to multiply it by this -3. Well, -8 times -3 is a +24. So remember, this -6 is not inside the parentheses, so it's all by itself. So I'm going to just drop that guy down. Okay, so now that we have finished distributing, we're finished the multiplying part, now we're going to take our like terms and add them up. All right, so the first we look for our variables, so I see -16y. There are no other y's, so that value just drops down. And then I'm going to look at my plain Jane numbers. So I see a +24 and I see a -6. So those are the two numbers I need to add up. 24 plus -6 is a +18. And then we're done. Moving along. Okay, on example number 3, we have two different sets of parentheses with something in front on both of them. So that means we're going to have to distribute twice. So on this first set of parentheses, I'm going to have to take this 3 and multiply it by the x, then take the 3 and multiply it by the 4. Same idea over here. We have another group of parentheses with the +2 out front. So I'm going to take 2, multiply it by this, and then take the 2 and multiply it by the -9. All right, so let's get after that. So first, 3 times x. Remember, when you have a number and a variable, multiplying it together, it just sticks together. So 3 times x is 3x. So now I'm going to take this 3 and multiply it by this +4. 3 times 4 is 12, a +12, so I put +12. All right, so now let's do our second set of distribution. So I'm going to take this +2 and multiply it by this 3x. 2 times 3x, so 2 times 3 we know is a +6. and we can't forget about our x. So 2 times 3x is 6x. All right, in our last part, we're going to take this positive 2 and we're going to multiply it by this negative 9. 2 times negative 9 is a negative 18. All right, so we're done with the multiplying part. Now we just need to take our like terms and add them together. So we do variables first. So let's look at our x's. See a positive 3x here and a positive 6x here. So those are the two numbers I need to add up. 3 plus 6 is 9, so that's how many total x's we have. And now we do our regular numbers. So I see a positive 12 and a negative 18. So those are the two numbers we need to add up. 12 plus negative 18 is equal to a negative 6, so I'm going to write minus 6. Okay, like on number 3, we have two different sets of parentheses, which means we're going to have to distribute twice. First, we're going to have to distribute this negative 5 to the inside the parentheses. And then we're going to have to take this negative 6 and distribute it to these guys inside the second set of parentheses. So first, let's take that negative 5 and multiply it by 2y. Negative 5 times 2 is a negative 10, and we can't forget about that y. So negative 5 times 2y is negative 10y. Now I'm going to take this negative 5 and I'm going to multiply it by a positive 4. Negative 5 times 4 is a negative 20. So I'm going to write minus 20. All right, so we're done with that first set. Now let's focus over here. So now I'm going to have to take this negative 6 and multiply it. So first I'm going to take negative 6 and multiply it by 3y. Well, negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. And I can't forget my y. So negative 6 times 3y is that negative 18y. And then finally, we're going to take this negative 6 and we're going to multiply it by a negative 8. A negative 6 times a negative 8 is a positive 48. Okay, so now that we have finished our distribution, we finished the multiplying part, now what we're going to do is we're going to look for our like terms. So we're going to look for our y's first and identify those. So I see negative 10y here, and then I see a negative 18y here. Okay, so we're going to add those two numbers together. Negative 10 plus negative 18 is equal to a negative 28, and those are our y's. Okay, now we look for our regular numbers, so let's identify those. I see a negative 20, and I see a positive 48. So now we have to add those two numbers together. Negative 20 plus 48 is equal to a positive 28. All right, now we're going to get into some fractions. Not a big deal, especially when you have your calculator to help you. So if you're not very good, it's okay. All right, so same idea, two sets of parentheses, which means I'm going to have to distribute once here and then again here. So let's look at that first set. I'm going to take this negative 1/4 and I'm going to multiply it by 12x. So I'm going to show you how you can put this in the calculator if, enter full screen, give me a sec. Okay, so it says negative 1/4, so negative. To enter in a fraction, you press Control Divide. It's 1/4, so I want a 1 on top. I want a 4 on bottom. And it was negative 1/4 times 12. And that gives us negative 3. So I know negative 1/4 times 12x is going to give me negative 3, and we can't forget the x. Okay, so now I'm going to take this negative 1/4 and I'm going to multiply it by negative 4. So I'm not going to freak out. I'm going to use my tools to help me. And I'm going to take that negative 1/4. Don't forget, if you want to put a fraction, you press Control Divide. So the 1 on top and a 4 on bottom, so that's negative 1/4 times, and this time it was negative 4. So I know negative 1/4 times negative 4 comes out to be a positive 1. So I'm going to put plus 1. Okay, so now we need to do the second set of parentheses. So now I'm multiplying 1/3 by everything behind it. So I'm going to take 1/3 times 9x. So if you don't know, it's okay to use your calculator. We're going to do 1/3, so we're going to press Control, divide, a 1 on top, a 3 on bottom, times 9. And now I know 1/3 times 9 is equal to 3. So I'm going to put plus 3, and we can't forget about our x. 1/3 times 9x is 3x. Okay, and from here on out, I'm not going to use the calculator. I just wanted to show you how you could use the calculator if you needed to. Okay, so we have one more step still. I have 1/3 times 12. Well, 1/3 times 12 is a positive 4. All right, so now that I've finished multiplying, now I'm going to find my like terms and combine them, which means add them up. So I see a negative 3x and I see a positive 3x. Well, if I take a negative 3 and I add 3, it's going to cancel out to 0. So really I'm going to have 0, I'm going to have 0 x's, which it's not necessary to put 0 x's. Okay, so now let's identify our regular numbers. So I have a positive 1 and a positive 4. So when I combine that, 1 plus 4 is 5, and that's all I have left. Because 0 x's, you don't have to put 0 x's. 0 x's means no x's. So the answer is 5. All right, so like I said, if you need to use your calculator, you are more than welcome to. Always use it to check yourself, but I'm not going to use it right now. Okay, so I need to distribute twice. First here, and then again over here with this negative 3. All right, so let's do the 1/2 first. So I'm going to do 1/2 times 10x. 1/2 times 10 is 5. So 1/2 times 10x is 5x. Can't forget about your x. Okay, now I'm going to take that 1/2 and I'm going to multiply it by that negative 6. 1/2 times negative 6 is a negative 3. All right, so we finished the first set. Let's move on to this set over here. So I'm going to take this negative 3 and multiply it by 4x. Negative 3 times 4x is a negative 12. Don't forget your x. And then finally, I'm going to take this negative 3 and I'm going to multiply it by negative 2. Negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. Okay, so now that we have finished the distribution, we finished the multiplying part, we're going to combine our like terms, which means we're going to take what look alike and add them together. So I see 5x's here and I see a negative 12x here. So those are the two numbers I add up. 5 plus negative 12 is a negative 7, and those are my x's. And then we do the regular numbers. I see a negative 3 here and a positive 6. So add those numbers up. Negative 3 plus 6 is equal to a positive 3. Moving along. Okay, so on this next problem, I love that it gives me the formula of area, A equals length times width. Okay, so I know that to find my area, I need to take the length and multiply it by the width. So it's asking me to find the area. So I need to take these two numbers and multiply them together because area equals length times width. So let's write it out. 1/3, remember parentheses means times, 3x plus 18. So you just multiply these two guys together to find, your area. All right, so let's go ahead and distribute. So I'm going to take this 1/3 and I'm going to multiply it by 3x. Well, 1/3 times 3 is 1, and we can't forget our x. If you want to leave it like that, that's fine. You can leave it written as 1x, as long as you remember that 1x is the same thing as just x. All right, let's keep going. We're not done. Now we have to take this 1/3 and multiply it by 18. Well, I know that 1/3 times 18 is equal to a positive 6. So I know that this guy is my area. And remember, area means all of this stuff right here. That's the area. All right, same idea, same thing. We're going to find the area, which means we're going to have to take the length and the width and multiply these guys together. So let's set it up. I'm going to take 1/8 and multiply it by 64x minus 40. Remember, parentheses means multiply. All right, so I'm going to have to distribute. I'm going to have to distribute this 1/8 to everything in the parentheses behind it. So let's multiply 1/8 times 64x. 1/8 times 64 is 8, so I can't forget my x. And now I'm going to have to take 1/8 and multiply it by negative 40. 1/8 times negative 40 is a negative 5, so I'm going to write that as minus 5. That is my area. Remember, area again is all that area on the inside. So that's my area. Moving along, almost done. Okay, it wants us to draw it out. So we're trying to find the perimeter of a rectangle that has a length of x plus 2 and a width of x minus 5. So we kind of did this yesterday with our find the perimeter. We added all the sides, but this time it's asking me to use this formula right here. Oops, sorry, you can't even see. Perimeter equals 2 lengths plus 2 widths. So perimeter equals 2L, 2 lengths plus 2 widths. All right, so we're going to take what we know and plug it in. So first let's draw a picture. And it told me the length is x plus 2, and it told me the width is x minus 5, and we're going to use the formula. So P, we don't know perimeter, that's what we're trying to find. P equals, so I can't plug in for P if I'm trying to find it. We don't know it. So P equals 2. And I can plug in for this L right here because I know what the length is. So when you plug in for a variable, you put parentheses. And I'm going to plug in what it told me the length was. So it told me L was x plus 2. Plus, so I have perimeter equals 2 lengths, we plugged in for L because we knew what it was, plus 2, and it told us the width, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in for W. Remember, when you plug in for W, you use parentheses, and instead of W, I'm going to put what it told me the width was, so x minus 5. So we have P is equal to 2 of our lengths plus 2 of our widths. Okay, so let's figure out what P is equal to. On the other side, we're going to have to distribute twice. We're going to have to distribute here in the first set of parentheses and then distribute again over here. So let's distribute. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 2 is a positive 4. All right, let's distribute the second time. We know that 2 times x is a positive 2x, and we know that 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Now that we've done our distribution, we're going to combine our like terms. X's first, so I have 2x's here, I have 2x's here. So we add those numbers together. 2 plus 2 is 4, so we have a total of 4x's. Now let's add our regular numbers. So I see a positive 4 and I see a negative 10. So we're going to add those up. 4 plus negative 10 is a negative 6, so I'm going to write that as minus 6. So we did it. We just found the perimeter. So remember, perimeter is the distance around a figure. So all the way around, if you add all these sides up, you're going to get 4x minus 6. All right, last one. Same idea. It's asking me to use the formula. Perimeter equals 2 lengths plus 2 widths. It's telling me that the length is 3x, and it's telling me that the width is x. So we're going to use that formula again. P equals 2L plus 2W, and we're going to plug in what we know. I can't plug in for P because we don't know it. That's what we're trying to find. P equals 2. I can plug in for L, so when we plug in, we use parentheses. So instead of L, we're going to plug in what it told me the length was, so that's 3x. Plus 2. And instead of W, we're going to put parentheses, because when we plug in, we use parentheses. And instead of W, we're going to plug in what it told me that the width was, which is x. All right, so now let's distribute. We're going to have to distribute here, and we're going to have to distribute here. So I know that 2 times 3x is 6x. And that was it, because that's the only thing inside the parentheses. So let's move on over here. And now I'm going to do 2 times x. 2 times x is a positive 2x. And I'm done there because that's the only thing inside the parentheses. So now all we have left is to combine our like terms. Well, I see x's here and I see x's here, so those are the two numbers we need to add up. 6 plus 2 is 8. So we have 8 total x's. And that is our perimeter. So we just figured out if we add up all this way around, all the sides, that would have been 8x perimeter. All right, later guys.